Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is eyeshadow palette month, and today we're ranking all of my warm toned eyeshadow palettes. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. I did a video like this a couple of years ago and lots of people really enjoyed it. So I thought I could cut my eyeshadow palette collection into different sections and rank all of those different sections for you. And today we are going to be doing the warm tone palettes. So let's just get to it. Before we get into the video, it may be good to know who you are watching. My name is Micah. I've been a content creator for more than a decade. I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and eyeshadow palettes are the bread and butter of my channel. So if that's something you are interested in, then I hope you'd like to consider subscribing. So before we get to the ranking, I have 3 sections here. So there are 31 palettes, but 30 of those I will be ranking because I have one honorable mention, because that is a palette I haven't tried yet. I've tried to focus these rankings mainly on eyeshadow palettes I have reviews up for. So there will be links in the description box down below if you want to see swatches and looks that I've done with these, because I have lots of other content with these up already. I just quickly want to breeze through these to let you know which ones are my favorite and which ones I still have in my collection and I still really enjoy them. But if I had to pick and choose what my best, most favorite warm tone palette is, these would be my picks as well. So first up we have the honorable mention, and this is the Gloss Gods Let's Get Nude. This is actually in my current review section, so that's why I was like, I can still show it in the video because the review with this will be coming very, very soon. I do palette reviews every single month on the channel, and I always include swatches, close-ups, and looks with every single shade in the palette. That's how I like to review my stuff. I try every single shade in every single palette I own before I make up my mind. And that's just something I haven't done yet as you're watching this video, or as I am filming this video, I should say. So that's why the Let's Get Nude from Gloss Gods, as lovely as this looks and as beautiful as it is, I do not feel comfortable ranking this yet. I know Gloss Gods is one of my favorite brands at the minute, especially for indie eyeshadow. They are Swedish and they are just really, really lovely, and you will see other palettes by them in other rankings for sure, or maybe some of those have already gone up. So I really enjoy the brand, so I didn't want to leave out this palette because I know a lot of you know I own this. But yeah, I can't rank it just yet. So we have 30 palettes in the ranking today, and I think that is a lot less than what I used to own. I will leave my previous warm tone ranking video linked in the description box down below, because I think I had over 60 at the time. I used to have a moment where there was a pretty equal split between like all the different categories in my makeup collection, and that's just not the case anymore. And before we get to the actual ranking of the 30 palettes I do have, I would like to point out a little bit of a disclaimer here, because I always get people commenting who don't seem to understand why I would rank something. This is completely based on my own subjective opinion. This has nothing to do with how good of a quality something is objectively. It's about how much I enjoyed using the palette. That doesn't mean that these palettes aren't any good, that you cannot enjoy them more than I do. But just know that if I were to rank these again tomorrow, I would probably get to a slightly different ranking as well. It's just all in good fun, you could say. So definitely don't think that just because you see me rank something really high or really low, that means it's like the best of the best makeup quality. It's just for my preferences, those were the things I enjoyed the most. That's how deep it goes. No deeper than that. Number 30 on the list is this. This is by Pink Flash. This is, I believe, a Chinese brand. This is their eyeshadow palette in shade 3, Strawberry something. I always forget to name the name. This is really cheap packaging. This was only like €5 off of YESSTYLE. And I don't want to knock affordable eyeshadow. I definitely enjoy some of my drugstore picks for sure. But this is just not really my color story. As you'll see, I do enjoy some warm tones. And one of the palettes that's in the top 10 is on my eyes today. So I do enjoy a warm tone from time to time. But it's just not where my heart lies. And this is just so warm and pink. But like not rosy pink. It's pink eye pink. And that's why this is just not a really good look for me personally. Is it a beautiful palette for how much you pay for it? Especially for the price point. I thought this was really good quality. It has one of those really like flaky, glittery things that a lot of Asian beauty brands seem to do. So this is a lovely palette quality-wise, but the color story wasn't quite right for me. Number 29 is this from Huda Beauty, and I didn't really know where to categorize this. This is the Cocky Haze, and one of the objections that a lot of people had to this was that it's not green enough, which is why I was like, I'm not going to put it with the green toned eyeshadows, because essentially this is a warmer toned neutral palette with a hint of green to it. So that's why it's here, and that's why it's ranked so low, because it's one of those palettes that I feel I just cannot make my mind up about. I like this as a companion to the Emerald Obsessions I have. I tend to pull some shades out of that, and then this, and then I get the look that I want. But I'm of the opinion that you should be able to use an eyeshadow palette as a standalone and create a look that you desire. And this is not the case for me with this one, which is why it's ranked pretty low here. And then this next one is perhaps a little bit of a weird one, because my Sultry palette is the ABH palette I created with a lot of the warm tones. So once I open this up, this is not the original Sultry color story. I decided to condense 6 of my ABH palettes into 2, and I build 1 warm tone palette and 1 cooler tone palette, and that's how it works for me. I'm of the opinion that my makeup collection should work for me and not just exist online for it to be pretty for you guys. So the Sultry itself, however, even though a lot of people were calling it a cool tone palette at the time, the original color story to me has never been cool toned. So it was a warm tone color story to begin with. And mine is a bit messy because these got a little bit crumbly when I repotted them. I used a hairdryer to take them out. I have a video up where you can see how I built this palette. So it has some shades from the Mono Renaissance. I know this green is from the Prism. And I think some of these like murkier shades here as well are from the original Sultry as well. I think this is actually the Rose Quartz shade that was originally in here. And I think Twig is still in the same spot. So there are definitely some shades here that I really enjoy. I wanted to keep the shades by ABH that I love, that I was going back to, but rather than having it in 6 different palettes, I wanted to have it in 1, and this is just a little bit messy. I don't reach it for it a ton anymore, but I do really enjoy having all of my favorite ABH shades in one place. Number 27 is this. This is by Kaleidos. I need to hold it like this. This is the Sashimi City. It's their Futurism 7, and I believe this is still available. Not entirely sure, because with Kaleidos, they have discontinued a lot of these Futurism palettes, and this is a really pretty, soft, warmer tone neutral eye look. I definitely have tried other things that look very much like it that are currently in my top 10. This is one that I've ranked so low because I just don't reach for these Kaleidos Futurism palettes a whole lot anymore. I'm definitely sort of trying to make an effort of using these more again, and I've definitely kept this in the past over a ColourPop palette that I used to have that was very similar. So I really appreciate it. It has some beautiful shades in, but because I have other things that can give a similar look, I don't reach for this as often, which is why this is in the lower part of the ranking. We all know I have a bunch of Zoeva palettes, and number 26 here today is the Premier palette. This is a beautiful warm toned color story with a pop of light green. This gold is pretty. This is one of those like oil slick duochrome kind of things. Something I've always appreciated about Zoeva. This has amazing quality eyeshadow. It's really, really good. But Zoeva has discontinued all of their 10-pan palettes. So this you can no longer get. So that's another reason for me to rank it this low. I still like it, but I definitely have other Zoeva palettes that I like better. And compared to any of the other warm tones I have, this is another one that I sort of have because I really enjoy it and I like the look of it and it has beautiful shades in, but I don't reach for it a lot. Next up is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. This was already quite a warm color story when it came out, but again, like with the ABH, I didn't love my Natasha Denona color stories all that much, so I rearranged 4 of them. I still have a couple in the original color story, but this has been rearranged into my perfect Natasha Denona warm-toned color story, and here is what it looks like. I know this bright orange was in the original My Dream palette, but it had like a black and a multi-chrome and some other shades. This way I feel I can get all of my stuff from Natasha Denona in one place and have it be manageable for what I like to go for. So that's why it's rearranged this way. Of course, this is not something you can buy, and I had 4 of these palettes that I've rearranged, so this will be very difficult to emulate. However, I do have a video up where I show you how I reorganize those 4 palettes. So if you want to know how this came to be, then you can. But the original color story was already quite warm toned, not quite right for me. So that's why this is ranked a little bit lower, but I really do enjoy the Natasha Denona formula. That's why I was like, okay, I'm gonna go through the effort of rearranging it so that it comes down to something that I truly enjoy, so that I can get more use out of these palettes, because it is one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas. So the Natasha Denona was number 25. This is number 24, and this is the Spice of Life from Zoeva. And this is one, I think one of the last ones they did that I bought that was in this chocolate bar sort of range. It has one really beautiful shade, and everything else is these like warmer tone neutrals that are really pretty, really high quality, but if it wasn't for that one shade, this would have been ranked even lower than the previous Zoeva palette, because this is another one where I'm like, as far as Zoeva goes, there are like 2 or 3 that I really deem to be like some of my ultimate favorites, and this isn't quite it. Another brand I love for their formula is in the number 23 spot, and this is Viseart. This is the London Étoile, and this is a really pretty color story. It is more warm toned. It's a little bit colorful as well, almost. Again, one I struggled to categorize where I wanted to put it. It's got that pop of purple. I really love this like green tone that it has. That's really lovely. But overall, this is just not one of my favorites. The reason why it has helped to bring it up a little bit higher in the ranking and not having it at the true bottom is because I just really enjoy the formula that much. So Viseart is one of my favorites for a reason. And then we have the Zoeva Cocoa Blend. This was one that everybody had at the time. This was so hyped up on YouTube. It has some really stunning shade. It's warm toned. You'd get something a little bit more cool here, but it's nothing too offensive, I find. It still goes really well with the warm tones. I just feel that this color story is quite dated compared to other things I have in my collection. This is very much 2016 kind of makeup, I feel, which is, I think I even got it before that, so this is a very old palette in my collection. But I enjoy the Zoeva quality for sure. However, there is one warmer tone palette from Zoeva that I just like a lot better in terms of like a warm tone palette. So that one is going to be ranked higher than this. And this one is right here at like very close to the top 20 because I still really enjoy it. But I do see the limitations of it nowadays. And then the final palette in the 30 to 20 sort of category is Carly Bible from ABH. This one is a really beautiful palette, and I never know where to categorize it because essentially it's a split between warm tones and cool tones. But I feel that the warm tones make this palette what it is. I love the peachy tones with like these reddish pinks. That's what makes the palette for me. The cool tones are nice, but I don't feel they're cool tone enough for it to go in my cool tone palette ranking video. So that's why this one is here. And I really enjoy the ABH formula. That's why I made the effort to rearrange 6 of my palettes into 2, because I wanted to keep the shades I love. But this is a palette I've never felt like rearranging because I just feel the color story works really well. And that's why it goes into the number 21 spot. So we're moving on from numbers 20 to 11 right now. And in the number 20 spot, we have this Juvia's Place number. This is the Saharan. This is the original warm tone palette that Juvia's Place ever came out with. Not sure if they still do it. And I've rearranged mine as well because I did take out the peach and replace it by this red, which was originally in the Afrique palette. That one I did declutter at the time. But I think this is a really solid warm tone palette. You get something really nice, bright and vibrant, but it also has this like murky, almost like greenish gray, which makes the palette for me. This is still a really good one, and I have never decluttered this. I've decluttered so many of my warm tones over time, but this is one that I've kept around for such a long time because I'm like, if I think of a warm tone palette, I think of this. But earlier in the year, I was sensing that warm tones were sort of becoming part of my preference again. For years, I didn't really reach for a lot of my warm tone palettes. But then I discovered these yellow tone palettes from K-Beauty brands, and I've tried a couple. This is the Cheese Plate from Lily by Red, and this is really, really pretty. It's essentially like neutrals and then these yellow tones here that makes it a little bit more warm toned. These are the classic K-Beauty color story where it's just a wash of color and you're not going to get a lot of color payoff. That is something you need to be aware of with K-Beauty. I sometimes really enjoy that look, and for what this does, I really like it. The reason why this isn't ranked any higher is because the pans are incredibly small and it can be difficult to pick it up for that reason with brushes. Another Zoeva palette. This is the Together We Grow, and this is a beautiful neutral palette, but I feel it is on the warmer toned side of things. So I kept this at the time over the Nabla side by side, even though I love that palette as well. This gave me what the Nabla side by side gave me, but then more curated and easier to work with. That's just how I felt. So we have these like warmer toned reds here, and then these neutrals are quite warm toned as well. It's just these two that could lean a little bit more cool toned, but overall I think this reads quite warm, especially on my cool to neutral complexion. So maybe if you have a true warm undertone, this may not pull very warm toned on you, but on me it did. Again, one that has been discontinued, so not in the top 10 for that reason, but one that I still really enjoy, and it has the lovely Zoeva quality that I know I love. Another Natasha Denona then in the number 17 spot. This is the Mini Zendo. And this was one I didn't think I was gonna like all that much because, like, if you look at this and you know that warm tones just aren't my preference, then maybe you go like, why do you like this? But these shades ended up working for me so much better, and this like greenish gray in the middle makes the palette for me. And for how tiny these 5 pans from Natasha Denona are, I think they are still very versatile and you get a lot of options for just 5 shades. But again, it's only 5 shades and quite expensive for what it is. So even though I really enjoy the brand, I cannot rank this any higher, but I think the number 17 spot is still pretty fair. Number 16 then is the Unearthly Medusa palette? No, Lore palette. I forgot the name of it for a second there. And this is another one where I didn't really know what video to put it in because is this a neutral palette? Is this warm tones? I feel, to me, this reads as a warm tone palette with a pop of color. That's how it works when it goes on my eyes. So even though this looks really colorful in the pen with these like brighter pops of like orange and these like pinky tones, on me, these shades all look quite neutral, and then I just have the blue and the green to contrast for the pop of color. So that's why it's here. I really enjoyed this older Unearthly formula. It's one of my favorites, and Unearthly Cosmetics is an indie brand that I feel does very interesting things. I adore this kind of warm tone where it's like warm tones with a pop of blue, which is what I've got on my eyes today. But I have plenty of other palettes that do that for me, that can do that very well. So was this a must-have in my collection? No, but I'm just a sucker for a warm tone with a pop of blue. So that's why I have plenty of those palettes, and I really enjoy this one. Next up is a classic, one of the original warm tone palettes from my collection, which is the Tartelette Toasted. And this is one of the very few like older style warm tone palettes that I still have that like date back to like that original orange toned hype from the 2016s. This is the one that I've kept around because this is still quite neutral. This is quite neutral compared to some of the other warm tones we got. You get a very nice spicy row in the middle. That's my favorite row here as well. I used to own stuff like the Urban Decay Naked Heat as well, but I have decluttered all of my Urban Decay palettes since then because it just got out of hand and I wasn't really using them all that much anymore. So I still have them in a makeup memory box, but this one was the one I ended up keeping over a lot of other things. Speaking of that sort of like yellow tone from K-Beauty brands that I just told you I like, this is Napping Cheese from Clio. This is a really pretty palette. In my brain, it's very comparable to the Futurism palette I showed you from Kaleidos in this video, and this is just a bit more of an updated version of that for me. This has 2 really beautiful shimmers. It has that peachy vibe that the Kaleidos one also has, and then these slightly yellow toned neutrals. So this is like softer warm tones, and that's something that I'm really sort of exploring this year. I have discovered that I like a warm tone, if it's just not too like saturated and heavy-handed. And these K-Beauty palettes just make it super easy to go in with a light hand and not have it be overly dramatic. Sometimes I like something a little bolder than this, but if I just want to go for something really quick and easy, I think these little K-Beauty palettes are just really where it's at for me. Next up is Pat McGrath. This is, I always get the name wrong, this is the Venus in Fleurs Look Squad in Voyeuristic Vixen. I always call it the Fleur Vixen because it makes it a little easier. And this is a beautiful warmer tone color story. This is another one of my favorites, especially because of that shimmer right there. It is the wonderful Pat McGrath formula I know I love. It's just one of those palettes where I feel I should just reach for it a lot more often than I actually do. This may be one I need to put back onto the list of things I need to go back to. And yes, I keep this in its box because I have so many of these little quads from Pat McGrath, and I threw away the packaging for some of them, but now I can no longer tell them apart. So keeping them in the box is the way to go for me. Number 12 is another Viseart palette. This is another Étoile. This is the San Francisco Étoile, and it has that really lovely skyline on the back, which is another reason why I love these. But this is essentially what I've just been telling you about. Warmer tone neutrals with a pop of blue, green, or teal. I just adore. It does have this really stunning taupe in as well, and that's why this gets ranked so much higher than some of my other palettes, because I feel that taupe is really what makes it perfect for me. I thought when I bought the London and the San Francisco together, because I bought them at the same time, that this was going to be my least favorite of the two because it has the bright orange in, and orange is just not my shade. However, because of that taupe, it kind of balances everything out, and the London palette is the one that I ended up liking the least of the two. So this one, in terms of like a warm tone palette with a pop of something, I like this one. And number 11, just shy of the top 10 here, is the Zoeva Caramel Melange. I promised there would be another Zoeva palette that would be ranked a little bit higher than some of the other ones here in the video today. And this thing I just really love. This is so, so beautiful. It is very orange heavy. So again, that sort of 2016, back in the day when everybody was going for the warm tones, that's what this palette has to offer. My favorite shade in the palette is this really stunning penny sort of shade. It's like this really beautiful metallic. It's called Liquid Center. I know you can no longer get this, but this is such a beautiful palette, and I think they should bring this back for sure. This is one that I would very greatly miss in my collection, because if I think of a warm tone palette by Zoeva, this would be my pick for sure. And that brings us to the top 10, my top 10 favorite warm tone palettes. Here we go. One that I'm not sure you can still get, but I have seen this listed on the Juvia's Place website, so I hope this is still available. And this is the Saharan 2. And remember what I said about liking warm tones with a pop of blue? This is essentially that warm tones with a pop of blue. But what makes this special and what makes this so difficult for me to declutter is that this entire top row, from the peach, the white, and this bronze, they all have something to them. They are really beautiful shimmers. The peach has a gold flip, the white has a gold flip, and the bronze also has something like special in there that, especially when it comes, when you apply it to the eyes, it looks really pretty. And this is such a good palette for like, especially these like reddish tones that it has here. They juxtapose so beautifully with this really nice bright pop of blue, and then you just have that mint shade. So this is such a well-balanced palette, and I wish Juvia's Place would still do this. I haven't bought from Juvia's Place in forever, but the palettes I have and I've hung on to over years have really stood the test of time for me, and they are some beautiful palettes. A palette that I definitely wanted to go back to again is the Venus XL from Lime Crime, and this is a beautiful berry tone palette. This is why I knew I could get rid of my AB8 Mono Renaissance, because this is a berry palette on steroids. That's what I've always called it. It has all the berry tones you could possibly want. Yes, it has a pop of something orange toned in the middle here, but nothing too much. It's a little bit rosy leaning even in some stretches, but to me, this is a very warm tone palette when it goes onto my eyes. So that's why it's in this video and not in the rosy tone video that I'm also going to be filming right after I film this one. But yeah, this is a beautiful warmer tone palette. I think they still do this actually. So even though this one's a bit older in my collection, I know this is still available for sure. And it's one of the best palettes I've ever tried from Lime Crime. Sadly discontinued, number 8 is the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk. This is such a good one. Everybody always raves about the fact that it had the purples, but for me, that wasn't where it was at. I really enjoyed some of these like neutral tones over on this side, and the fact that we get the warm tones, which we can then add the pop of purple to, that's what made the palette for me. So yes, I think I'm gonna sound like a broken record in this top 10, because I know there are some other palettes to come that have this like warm toned with a pop of something sort of vibe for me, because that's my favorite way to wear warm tones. A little bit like I'm doing today, just setting it up with a warm tone in the crease, and then adding some of the colorful shades, or doing a full-on warm toned look with just a pop of color on the lower lash line. That's how I use these palettes the most, and this is another excellent one. I wish they would still do this, because this was one of the best ones that Huda Beauty did, and I still really enjoy mine. Number 7, again, I realize that this is also one you can no longer get. However, the brand does still sell a version of this. It's just in the newer packaging, and it's not quite like this, but Unearthly still does a full magic palette, so do with that what you wish. This is the original one that they did, and this is one of my favorite fall color stories. Look at how beautiful it is. It is quite warm toned, but you can make it a little bit more neutral or cool toned leaning with some of these browns that are in here, but the purples in here are quite warm toned. And then of course you can again add that sort of pop of turquoise to brighten it up and lighten it up if you'd like to. I really think this is a stunning warmer tone palette that is on the more colorful side, but without it being super grungy or super pastel heavy. Beautiful for the fall season. I promised that the eyeshadow palette that's on my eyes today would be in the top 10, and that is what we're using for number 6. This is the Game Beauty Victory palette. I have gone through several renditions of this exact sort of color story, where it's these warm toned neutrals with a pop of teal. What I ended up doing with this look, let me see, I used this in the crease, and then I used this in the outer V, this all over the lid, and then I also used those 2 shades on the lower lash line, and I used the white that also has a blue flip in the inner corner. It's just an incredibly stunning palette. Like I've said, you don't need this one exactly, because I feel so many brands do a version of this. I used to own the ColourPop Dream Straight, for instance, that did that for me. And like I can't think of the other one at the top of my head, but I know of at least like another 1 or 2 that did this for me. And this is the one that I've kept around personally, because I just feel that this is a really nice curated color story that does that. It gives me exactly what I want, and the packaging is really gorgeous. And that brings me to my top 5. My top 5 favorite warm toned palettes. The first one in the top 5 is the ABH Soft Glam. So I mentioned and I showed you my rearranged palette, but this is one I've never rearranged because I love it that much. I went back to it again this year and enjoyed every look I did. This is such a beautiful palette for me. I don't love these orange tones that it has, but everything else in here is like a warmer, rosy toned neutral, and that's what I enjoy. Again, a palette I could have put with my rosy tone palette ranking, of course, but I feel to me this, in my brain, it works more like a warmer tone neutral, and it just happens to have some rose tones in. So overall, if I want to go for a warm toned look, I tend to still reach for this a lot, because in my brain, that's just what it gives me every single time. So the ABH Soft Glam has very much stood the test of time in my makeup collection. Another one that you can no longer get, but the brand does have versions of this out. However, I feel they look very differently to what this looks like, but it's the Oden's Eye Solomona, and it's my favorite Oden's Eye eyeshadow palette, I think, till this day. They had to discontinue this because they could no longer source the pigments, I believe, but this is what it looks like. It has these really beautiful mustardy sort of warm tones. This bronze makes it super warm toned, this sort of golden tone, but what makes this palette a standout to me is this really nice duochrome, this really nice bronzy brown, and of course we can again contrast it with a pop of something else. The lilac in here makes the palette for me together with the two duochromes. every single time I use this palette, I just put one of those yellow tones in the crease, put the duochrome shimmer on the lid, and then the darker shade I use as a bit of liner, and then that pop of lilac on the lower lash line. Works every time. Number 3 then is the Roman Better Than palette in Mahogany Garden. This is one that I've tried just this year, and it was part of my exploration, if you wish, of all of these really fun warm tones that are out there. And because I like the Better Than palettes from Roman so much, I adore this formula, I wanted to try this. This has 4 shimmers and everything else is matte. It's beautifully warm toned, but not overly saturated. It never pulls true orange or true yellow. This is such a good warm tone neutral palette, and it looks beautiful against my complexion, especially in the summertime. So this is one I definitely want to go back to in like post-summer season. I think this may be lovely. And number 2, I wanted to put this really affordable option in. This is another recent find. This is the Essence Welcome to Cape Town, and I've shown you this already. I'm not sure if this is still coming up or not, but this is going to be featured in my top 10 drugstore palettes as well that I'm doing this month, because this is very pretty. It's got warmer toned neutrals here. These are a little bit more cool toned, but the greens make it quite warm toned, and the teals I feel as well. The way teals work in my brain is like a warmer tone blue because they have green in them. I'm not sure if I'm making sense. So overall, I feel this is a pretty warm tone palette. Really pretty. You can mix and match everything with each other. And at just $6.99 at the drugstore, you can do no wrong. I have mentioned a lot how I really adore this, even though I didn't love and enjoy the other palettes that come in the same series, because Essence has been doing this series for a while, but this is the first one that has truly wowed me. Drum roll please, number 1 in the warm tone palette ranking, I don't think comes as a surprise because, it's the other way around. The Nabla Cutie in Analog, I think for my skin tone, is still the best warm tone palette I have ever found. This is beautiful. It looks a little bit red and like orange heavy, but for some reason these shades have a slight pink undertone when I use them. That's why they work for me without giving me pink eye. That's really important. It has enough darkness, and then it has these really pretty duochrome that I always use all over the lid. This is such a good like one-stop shop when it comes to a warm tone makeup look for myself, that I'm like, yeah, I just still really enjoy this. I don't think anything I've tried recently has been able to top this, so this is still my number 1 favorite warm tone palette in my makeup collection. And I think it was actually 2 years ago when I did my last warm tone palette ranking video, so that hasn't changed yet. Usually when I have a favorite, it tends to stay a favorite for a while. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me. This was the ranking I wanted to share with you today. So thumbs it up if you liked it. Check out the description box down below because there will be loads of links there. I will try to link as many of these if you're looking to purchase them. I'm not sure how successful I will be because some of these I may not be able to link them. I'm not sure yet. So, but if you want to shop through them and you do use those links, then I could make a small commission and that would help out the channel. So thank you so very much in advance. Subscribe if you want to stay tuned for when I make new videos. And currently we're still in the midst of eyeshadow palette month and I'm posting every single day. So I hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye.